is an open letter about a case against democracy. Here's the thing, folks. Many of you may say, how can you speak against democracy when you are actually living in one? Or to which I can say, yes, there's a time and a place in the evolutionary ladder that the societies move up on, but democracy is not beneficial to everyone at all times, to all societies at all times. It's as simple as that. This whole case of the pink skins, the pink skin countries, the pink skin alliances, pushing this narrative around the world, stating that no, we have to go invade other countries, set them free, and bring democracy to them. This is a bullshit narrative. It's a bullshit narrative because here's the thing about democracy. Democracy is a very delicate. First of all, democracy is a system of governance, like many other forms of governance. It's a system. It's a system of governing a people. But the thing about democracy is that it's a very delicate system. Very delicate. Checks and balances and honor and integrity all have to be in play for this fucking thing to work. If there are no checks and balances, if there's no honor, there's no integrity, and most important of all, if there is no education, the fucking thing won't work. If the voters are not educated enough, and if the elected are not educated enough, the fucking thing won't work. It won't. It just won't. Example. Look at India and China. India is considered as the largest democracy in the world, and they say it so proudly, and the fucking media keeps repeating it. India, yes, you can call it the largest democracy in the world. You can also call it the largest shithole in the world. I guess because everybody shits on the street, because this democracy has, for the past 100 years of being democracy, hasn't figured out a way to take care of people's piss and shit. If you got a system of governance that can't take care of the most primary needs of mammals, which is pissing and shitting, then that system of governance is no good for that society at that time, at where they are in their evolutionary ladder, in their evolutionary scale. So, but we see that after 100 years of democracy and after 100 years of whatever the Chinese are running themselves with, whatever system the Chinese are following, you can see that the Chinese have done quite better than the Indians have. And these guys have been running democracy for 100 years, and those guys have been running their own system for 100 years, which is certainly not democracy. And then by looking at the results, you have to conclude that maybe democracy hasn't produced the best results in India. But then you look at United States, and you see democracy has given the people such jewels as Reagan, an ex-actor who wasn't qualified for the position that he held. Democracy has also given, which he held that position for a decade. For a decade of a country's history, the job that once was held by George Washington, the intellectual, was held by an B-movie actor who could read, who could memorize scripts well. Then the job of democracy, then the top job of democracy was given to other jewels, such as Nixon, who was, was really a crook. It was given to Bush, who was unqualified and uneducated and unprepared. Then given to Trump. And is producing such jewels in the rest of the legislature as, as many of the representatives in the House and the Senate of the United States that are less than intelligent, not very, don't have an analytical mind, and you're thinking this is a job, being a senator or a representative is a job for an analytical mind. How come many of these folks don't have an analytical mind? And what kind of system, you want to call it democracy, you want to call it whatever name you want to call it, what kind of system would allow people who don't have an analytical mind to occupy jobs whose main function, main need is having an analytical mind to evaluate points and views and options, and many of these folks don't have that analytical mind. Then you have to go back to what kind of system have put these guys in charge who don't have an analytical mind, who are not the best and the brightest. And then, then you have to conclude that maybe that system has an issue. Maybe that system is not the best system for this point in time in the evolution of this society. Again, folks, I'm against democracy when the environment doesn't call for democracy. But then you have a democracy like Sweden, like Norway, like Finland, like Germany, that is working just fine. Perfect. And you have very intellectual minds running those countries who have honor and dignity and analytical, most important of all, an analytical mind, and they have been educated. That's why they have an analytical mind. And the whole thing is functioning more or less perfectly as it was meant to function, because the population over there in these countries that I named are also well educated, very well educated. So this whole idea that this form of government is needed and necessary for all at all times, for all societies at all times during their any point in their evolutionary scale, doesn't matter how educated the people are, it doesn't matter, you can have democracy and it will all work out for the best. Nope, sorry, don't agree. The evidence doesn't show that. Another example, United States itself. In Uncle Sam's land, once upon a time, only the very educated were allowed to vote. And the candidates, just by natural selection of having a intellectual debate, scientific debates, the intelligent who wanted to run for, become a public representatives were weeded out. We are talking about way at the beginning of the Republic, very time-wise, very near to 1776. So at that time, the only, the very educated, we're talking about the plantation owners and their family and whatever. They who had the money to educate themselves and their children, they had the right to vote. And, they voted, and because they were educated and their children were educated, because they spend a lot of money on that education, the system was running just fine. Educated representative, educated public chooses an educated representative, an intellectual representative, and democracy works just fine. The problem arises is when, you give the right to vote to everyone, but you don't educate everyone, as well as the plantation owners used to educate themselves and their children and everybody they were associated with, everybody they were responsible for, except of course their slaves. So the whole point is this: if you're giving the right to vote to people who are not very well educated, I'm not talking about being able to read or write. I'm talking about being able to speak a couple of languages, be very good in math and physics, and that kind of education. That kind of education that produces an analytical mind. If the voter has an analytical mind, the voter will not, vote for, oil salesmen, snake oil salesmen, and you have a democracy. The representative will be, educated with an analytical mind, just like their electorate, just like their voters. And then these representatives who do have an analytical mind and do have things that go with an analytical mind, compassion and dignity and honor and integrity, these all go with an analytical mind, because in an analytical mind you basically you don't see you see the bigger purpose, you see the bigger point in life, you see a higher purpose than just serving yourself. When you are educated, when you do have an analytical mind, people tend to be less self-serving and more for the good of all. And that's what makes democracy work. What democracy in the United States has turned into is because due to the fact that they have given the right to vote to everyone, but they are not educating everyone. There's no money in education. There's a lot of money in defense. The defense budget is, I believe I saw it once, that recently the defense budget of the United States is like 7 times its education budget. Defense budget 7 times education budget. And you're thinking, wow, so you really don't care about the voters being educated, but you really care about the voters being safe? Well, as the United States is not under attack at home, so you're not really spending the money on safety either, because nobody's threatening the United States mainland. So the money is being spent on target practice on the other side of the planet, while the voters are being left uneducated and then these voters have to vote, and then these voters, because they're uneducated, from time to time they buy the shit that the snake oil salesman is selling, and then every other representative becomes not very, you know, not very analytical, or not very good, not very intelligent, not very educated, because the people were duped by, and then you have to turn back and say, what kind of system allows, if a system allows this to continue, and which the defense budget is 7 times the education budget, and then the voters then the voters have to be sold a candidate like toothpaste with a couple of commercial on TV and couple of punchline on TV, which really don't make that much of a sense anyway, and the voters pick this candidate, and the candidate goes in, and the candidate votes for the same thing, and that is defense budget being 7 times education budget. And then you're wondering, are you folks planning to have a democracy? Because this is not working out. Because the result of the democracy is not working out. Because, I mean, when you have an actor and a showman and these guys represented as the highest executive people in a democracy, and then these incompetent people choose the top judiciary appointees of the Supreme Court, and you have ex-frat boys finding their way into Supreme Court, and an Uncle Tom finding his way into the Supreme Court, and you're like, oh fuck, this is not working. This is not working like, let's just say this is not working as good as it should be working. Because first step is educated people. And educated people laugh at a lot of... Educated people laugh out snake oil salesmen. Because educated people have a, you know, analytical mind, and if a snake oil salesman comes in and starts selling snake oil, trying to sell snake oil, educated people just laugh him off. So get the fuck out of here. It's just that the uneducated people are the ones who are willing to buy the snake oil, because you know they don't have the mindset to analyze what he's saying is probably, you know, not true. But so you see that my case is against democracy when the society is not prepared for democracy. First educate the society, then let it choose. Having a democracy for a society that's not ready is like, you know, having democracy for children. If you give children, because the only a 30-year-old without an education is just as simple-minded and naive as a 10-year-old. Example, you take a 10-year-old, 30-year-old, you take a 30-year-old from the Amazon rainforest, one of those tribes, you go trap one of those 30-year-olds, bring him to the city. Now this 30-year-old that was caught in Amazon rainforest, one of those untouched tribes, this 30-year-old right now sitting in the city has just about as information as how the world around him works as a 5-year-old who has grown up in the city. Even the 5-year-old probably knows more than him. Let's say a 2-year-old. So you got a 32-year-old and a 2-year-old who think exactly alike, because one hasn't been educated due to his circumstances and one hasn't been educated because of his age. So there is really no difference between an uneducated 32-year-old and a normal 2-year-old. This is the thing. And then when you when you say let's have democracy for children, just for this fact of not being prepared and not being educated enough, not being informed enough, you cannot have democracy for children, because children, don't have enough information to deduct, to analyze anything. So I laugh my ass off when after I get over my frustration, when I see that the pink skins keep advertising democracy for Africa and Asia. Everybody should have democracy, and democracy is the best form of government. What are you selling, and who are you selling it to? Children with a democracy will vote to have pizza three meals a day. Children with participating in democracy will vote for themselves having ice cream 3 meals a day. Is that a good thing? Is that possible? So the whole point of having a form of government governing the people has to be based on how much these people understand, how educated they are, how analytical they are, and how much they understand. If they don't understand much and you give them the tool to choose the direction of the tribe, it's pretty good chance they're not going to choose the right direction. If they don't have the tools, they don't have the tools to choose the right direction. And by tools, it here means education. If people are not educated, informed enough, informed, education, information, same thing. If people are not educated enough to not be children and be adults with analytical minds, they shouldn't be given the right to choose, because they're probably going to, every time they're going to choose the wrong direction. It's not that because they're bad people, it's just because they don't know enough to choose the right direction. They have to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo. They have to go heads or tails. And that's what the recent election, well, when I say recent, I mean the last 100 years of election in United States has turned into. It's like, eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Then at the end, it's in primaries, it's eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Whoever sells the best, has the best sales pitch, not whoever has the best plan, whoever has the best sales pitch. And then at the final showdown, it's a heads or tail, and everybody has to hold their nose, as they say it. Hold their nose. Why do you have to hold their nose? It's either you agree with his, plans, or you don't agree with his plans. I'm sorry, but this what you folks call democracy, and you invade countries to bring them democracy because it's the best form of government. Fuck you. The Chinese haven't had democracy, and they have advanced 100 times more than Indians who have had democracy with the same number of people. If the objective is, advancing your people, everything, making the environment more pleasant, more palatable for your people, then the Chinese have been more successful than the Indians. That by itself is a case against democracy. Maybe the Chinese now, or maybe in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, maybe they will be ready for democracy, because by that time the Chinese have, ripped through and educated their people that to the level that everyone is a scientist. Everybody has a PhD in China. Yeah, at that time you can have democracy. Just like Norwegians and Swedish and the Finnish and the Germans, and when you educate your public well enough that every one of them speaks a couple of languages and is good in math and physics and sciences and biology and chemistry, then by all means, please have democracy. Because at that point you can't help it. People who know stuff want to, have influence in the direction that they're going, personally and socially, as a society. But you can't have democracy for children. You can't have democracy for uneducated people. You can't have democracy for uninformed people. You can't have democracy for African tribes. You can't. You can't have democracy for primitive cultures. Now, these cultures can be, still at the primitive stages, from the cave coming up, or these societies may have been forced into going back to being primitive, because some people have decided to spend more money on defense than on education. So the society was educated and intellectual, then at one point it was, and then a lot of money was spent on guns and ammo, and then there was no money for education, and the society has come, the education level and information level of the society has dropped down, and now probably you need a little more. Then now the society is trying to continue to function as a democracy, but it keeps missing the mark, and choosing representatives which are they themselves are not very well informed and educated and intellectual and wise. It was so funny that Mr. Trump went to, it was so telling, went to United Nations, and on his first address to United Nations he started touting his own what he has done, his accomplishments in the domestic arena. And the United Nations, everybody first they were shocked, as if like maybe he has, maybe somebody has screwed up and switched his script. They have, at the last minute, everybody was shocked, because I was shocked, because I thought maybe somebody has screwed up and the scripts were switched at the last moment, and somebody gave him the wrong speech to read, and that speech was meant for a domestic audience in a domestic situation, because that was the plot of a comic show in Yes Minister. It's a British comedy show in which the minister is given the wrong speech to read in front of a wrong crowd, and he goes almost half this, he reads half the speech until he realizes that shit, this is the wrong speech, and then they find the right speech. And then the funny thing is, most of the other speech is also the same thing, except at the end it refers to this circumstance and not the other circumstance. But my point is this, that Trump, with all the audacity in the world, he was reading a domestically, a domestic a speech that where he, was touting his domestic achievements to an international audience, and the audience at first, after they got over their shock, they started laughing, and he said, I wasn't expecting that. Why everybody's laughing? I wasn't expecting that reaction. What did you expect? You're reading your domestic achievement to an international crowd. You can't, nobody around you was able to, explain to you that you need to say something to these people. That's what have you done for internationally? How is it that you're part of this planet, and this planet, what have you done for this planet that would benefit this planet, that would benefit all the plants and animals and humans on this planet? And he couldn't care less, and he apparently, that was the right speech, and he's sort of saying that I don't give a fuck about you guys, but let me tell you what I've done at home. It's sort of like you going to your work, and instead of telling your boss what you have done at work and how you're helping this factory to run, instead of that, you start telling your boss that how good was the dinner that you cooked last night at home for your family. It's sort of like, what are you talking about, man? So the quality of the electorate, this is the quality of the candidate, and now the quality of the representative. I'm sorry, no, this is a case against democracy. Democracy is not the right system of governance for all people at all times. It's not. People first have to be educated, very well educated, very well informed, and then yes, they can be the masters of their own way in life, their own direction in life. But just as you don't give a child the opportunity to find his own way in life, you cannot give an uninformed society the tools to find its own direction in the world, because just like a child, an uninformed society will always go for the silly option, the silly choice, which usually ends badly.